Have y'all ever seen something and said, that is so stupid, and wonder how it worked?
The viral video shows Robbie Stratton running through a convenience store with an alligator in his hands. He takes the animal in the beer fridge as well.
I don't even remember coming up here.
We asked Stratton where the alligator came from.
No clue.
That's exactly how I felt reading about Eli Weinstein. Perhaps one of the top conmen of the 21st century, Eli Weinstein was born in New Jersey as a part of the traditional Jewish Orthodox community. Now, I just told you this guy's a con man, but I want you to take a guess. What do you think this guy did before he started to become a full-time con? This is not a trick. You can figure this out if you think about it. The irony is crazy. He was a used car salesman. Sometimes the jokes just write themselves, but when I read that, I said, oh my gosh, this is Matilda's dad. Obviously, one's wearing a yarmulke, the other has a mustache, but you take the yarmulke and the mustache away and you age him 20 years. He's obviously gonna do some type of scam in the auto industry, and that's how he's gonna make a bunch of money. No, it isn't. He's gonna go and sell real estate. He's gonna promise investors insider access to what he calls undervalued properties, allowing them to get access to these exclusive deals and make a bunch of money. Does he have experience? Nope. Does he have credentials? Nope. Does he have a license? Nope. Does he have any idea what he's doing? Hell no. He is just making this shit up as he goes. He was able to actually get some traction simply building on the trust and personal relationships that he built in his community. He's interacting with people who have something in common, a shared heritage. One of the reasons this works so well for Weinstein is the informal culture in this Jewish Orthodox community. And that leads to a lot of handshake deals being done, trust being put into people in your community, and when a wolf like Eli Weinstein comes along, he can tear him up and leave tons of people devastated. He promised these investors would have access to undervalued properties, which doesn't actually make any sense because how does he have access to properties that other people don't have access to? But then again, it's all based on his charisma and his ability to play on his personal relationships, and early investors saw success. You know why they saw success? Because it was a Ponzi scheme. He would take later investors' money to pay off early investors to make it look like the business is legitimate. Now I want you to stop and take a guess at how much money you think this man was able to raise. Keep in mind, he has no experience in any of this. The only thing he has going for him is his charisma and persuasion. He raised roughly $200 million. When I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, $200 million with no experience and nothing? This has to be the most charismatic man I've ever seen in my life. Imagine you're going out for a night on the town, you and your friends go to the club, and the bouncer says, no, you can't get in this club. Call Eli Weinstein. He'll show up in his yarmulke, and I don't know what he's gonna do, man, but he's gonna go up there and he's gonna say something to the bouncer. I guarantee that bouncer lets you in after Eli Weinstein shows up. But we do have a general idea of what Weinstein spent his money on, and you could probably guess with these type of fraudsters. He bought luxury items, he spent personal expenses, but there was one thing that stuck out that really irked me: gambling. And look, I'm not trying to lecture him because I've gambled way more than I should in my lifetime. I used to have a really serious problem with that. But when you gamble because you want to win money. Bro, you already have the money. You're literally taking the money that you want, gambling it to try to win it, losing it, then trying to win back the money you already had. Casinos love people like Eli Weinstein because they're not going to win money. They're going for the thrill. They're going because they're addicted to it. And it's just utterly repulsive that someone would go steal hundreds of millions of dollars and piss it away on slots. But what's even slimier is that he took advantage of his own community, of people that's like him. I couldn't help but think about The Godfather Part 2 when Vito Corleone is growing up in New York. The Italian neighborhood is ran by a man named Don Fanucci, and Don Fanucci exploits the Italian people, and Vito Corleone, who eventually became the Godfather, took exception to that, talking how you shouldn't take advantage of the people that are like you should stick together, and that was a core value of Don Corleone throughout the entire movie. But like most Ponzi schemes, they don't last forever because it's all depends on people investing money, and with him being a part of a community and that being his primary source of money, there's a finite amount of money and a finite amount of people willing to invest. Complaints arose, a federal investigation was opened, and he was arrested after he couldn't pay the returns that his investors demanded. I understand what you're thinking. He swindled $200 million, he got arrested, that's the end of the story.
The lie detector test determined that was a lie.
This is where it gets dumb. So Weinstein's been arrested, so he's obviously out on bail, he's a nonviolent defender, and this man decides to set up another fraud scheme while released on pre-trial bail. This was a Facebook pre-IPO scam. This was many years ago, right around the time Facebook was preparing to go public as a company, claiming that he had access to these pre-IPO Facebook shares. He's just making this whole thing up. Obviously, he doesn't have any shares. He doesn't know anyone at Facebook. He has no connections to any of these people. He's literally just bullshitting this entire thing. How much money do you think Eli Weinstein was able to raise while he's on trial for this Facebook pre-IPO stock offering? He would scam millions of dollars in this scheme. The man who's been arrested for fraud ran another $1 million fraud in the custody of the feds. Obviously, no shares were delivered because there are no shares. It was a scam. The money went immediately into the pocket of Weinstein. The craziest part of this whole scenario is that the feds didn't even realize he was doing this until complaints started to arise after Facebook went public and people were complaining about not receiving the shares that they purchased through Weinstein. I want to take 10 seconds to say thank you guys so much for getting me to 10,000 subscribers. Please leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel. I don't take sponsorship, so you're never going to see any. This video is brought to you by War Thunder. I just don't believe in that, and if you guys support my channel, I'll do my best to keep it that way. In 2014, Weinstein would be sentenced 22 years for his Ponzi scheme and an additional 2 years for his scam that he did while on trial in order to pay over $200 million in restitution to his victims. Then he entered federal prison. This is just one of those stories that defies logic in every single way. On January 19, 2021, on the last day of office of President Trump's first term, he decided to commute the sentence of Eli Weinstein and just let him out. He only had served 8 out of his 24-year term, and he gave him a presidential pardon.
I want to take this opportunity to thank all the Askanim, lawyers and Rabbanim that stood beside me and helped me to promote this clemency to the president and get him to review it and to grant it to me and my family. Thank you all so much. I also want to say to my victims who wrote support letters on my behalf and were there to support me, I want to thank you for those letters and for believing in me and giving me the opportunity to have a second chance.
And he was released, and he would go on to start a new life and live out his days the right way.
The lie detector test determined that was a lie.
I'm all for reforming, I'm all for getting second chances in life, but we have to stop and be real for a second. Bro ran a fraud scheme while on trial for fraud. If that's not a telltale sign that that's what this dude is at his core, I don't know what else is. After Weinstein was released from prison, he immediately started into a new fraud scheme. Well, gee, who could have saw that coming? But he knew that his name, Eli Weinstein, was tarnished with being a fraudster, so he had to come up with an alias. This shows just how dedicated he is to his craft, that rather than do something legitimate, he creates an entire new alias called Mike Koenig to intentionally conceal his identity from both investors and accomplices. This time he actually created a business, whereas the first time it was pretty much just him saying stuff. It was called Optimus Investments. But in reality, it was just a shell company. They claimed to have access to high in-demand goods, such as baby formula, PPE masks, medical supplies, goods desired for desirable countries like Ukraine or other countries dealing with war or internal conflicts. The idea was that they were going to sell these in-demand goods at massive markups. What a lot of people don't know about this is back during this time where the pandemic was going on and masks were trending and stuff like that, there were heavy restrictions on selling masks and other PPE. This company didn't have any authorizations, didn't have any licenses or anything, so they would be blackballed from selling this stuff anyway. And as far as going and selling it to countries like Ukraine, why would they buy from this company that was just created with these mystery people no one's ever heard of versus buying from a verifiable vendor? It doesn't really make sense when you try to peel back the layers, and Weinstein promised there would be massive returns on this, but in reality, no one got anything because there was no product. The money was immediately diverted for personal use with Weinstein and his other associates. Now, he did pay out early investors with later investors' money, confirming that it is a Ponzi scheme. And I want you to guess, we're back to the guessing table. If you haven't got any right, this is your chance. How much money do you think Weinstein was able to steal after immediately being released from prison? I'm gonna give you a hint. It's less than he stole on his first Ponzi scheme. He stole roughly $35 to $38 million after immediately being released from prison. Imagine being given a second chance at life. You have people constantly vouching on your behalf, writing letters for you, calling for you. You get the attention of the President of the United States, and you immediately turn around and say, thanks, but screw you. A Ponzi scheme is only successful successful as long as it can continue to make money. Once deals stop coming in, investors stop being able to get paid out, and it collapses. That's exactly what happened, leading Weinstein to admit his real identity in a recorded meeting in August of 2022. Weinstein said, quote, "I finagled and ponzied and lied to people to cover us." Weinstein would once again be arrested and find his way back into his second home, where he was charged with wires fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and operating a fraudulent scheme as a previously convicted felon. This is one of the fastest trials I've ever seen. It was a 6-week federal trial, and it took about 20 minutes to convict him. Nah, I just made that up. I don't know. It probably took a lot less time than that, honestly. But the jury convicted him pretty much immediately on all major counts. And in late 2025, Weinstein, who is now 51 years old, was sentenced to 37 years in prison in order to pay an additional $44.3 million in restitution, which is actually more money than he stole the second time around. But let's be honest, if he's in prison, they're never going to see all that money. And one of his co-defendants have already been sentenced to 12 years in prison, with his other 5 accomplices all having pled guilty and awaiting sentencing. When someone shows you who they are, they're not going to magically change just because you give them a second chance. It's like taking a bear in an enclosure and releasing it and expecting it not to do anything because you release it. It's still going to maul you. It's a bear. Given that Weinstein's 51 years old, he's essentially serving a life sentence and he won't be released until he's 88. If this guy can steal hundreds of millions of dollars on pure charisma, you can build up the confidence to ask her out or to go eat at a restaurant by yourself or something like that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you guys next week.